Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics, back with our third video in our pursuit of the perfect quarter and seam allowance. I've been on the hunt for notions that help us achieve that. We talked in our first video about the other elements, the good thread, the sharp blade in the rotary cutter, a fresh needle in your sewing machine, sizing your fabrics before you press them, good rulers, all of that. But we also know that once you get to that sewing machine, it all comes down to the quarter inch seam allowance. In the first video, we talked about our diagonal seam tape for Cluck Cluck Sew. We used some regular screen printed cotton fabrics, some ombre confetti from Moda, and got a really solid quarter inch seam allowance on that. We also went through our guidelines with our, we used our seam setter. If you haven't seen these videos, be sure to go back and watch those. They're all just great aids. Figure out what works best for you. We put our kind of our sticky notes, I would say, the kind of our little mini sticky notes in there. Set that in there. That was helping us just dial in that scant quarter inch seam allowance. We sewed some flannel, took a measurement check. Again, we needed that scant quarter to help us work through the bulk of that flannel and still have our strip piece unit be coming out true at 4.5 wide. Today, another product that I found that I'm also enjoying using, and we'll be using that today with some batik. I love sewing with batik. This is from Sew Very Smooth. I'm going to first start off with talking about using this guide. And what I love is it gives you all kinds of measurements here, from down to 1/8, a scant quarter, and all the way up to 1.5, which I love that. Sometimes when I'm sewing a bag pattern and they want me to sew with 3/4 inch seam allowance, I don't really know where that is. It's nice to have a tool that's going to help me dial that in, and I can now come in with maybe a tape, sticky notes, or maybe we go back to our guidelines to put those on our machine, and we could be using some of the things I covered in our second video in combination. So I'm going to head over to the sewing machine. I want to show you how we're going to use that. And I will today just use my guidelines to, once I establish this location, I'm going to put that down. But then I want to also mention one of the other notions that they have produced there at Sew Very Smooth that may be an attractive option for you. Okay, so let's head over to our sewing machine. So let's just look at our tool right here. Those are the measurements that I'm talking about, and you can see the hole in the needle. Today, because I'm going to be working with batik, which is very thin, I think if I sew with a scant quarter, I might be in trouble and be having my block or my strip piece unit too big. I am going to go for a full 1/4 inch because of that reason. So I'm going to bring this into my machine, and I'm just going to hand crank that needle right down through there. Now the goal will be to try to get this running parallel with some line. I can see my lines here. If you just buy the gauge, you need to put something on that machine to mark your location. Again, you could use painter's tape if you want, masking tape, which may or may not leave a residue. I'm going to go back to my guidelines, which that you can just buy that 6-pack. You don't have to buy the seam guide setter with that. Once this is established and holding steady, I think I'm running parallel right there. Let's try that one more time. We'll go right up next to it and put that down. That has established for me. And now I would simply lift that needle up and move away, and I'm ready to go. I love that. I love that. Okay, let's pretend, like in my example, that I need a 3/4 inch seam allowance. That is definitely not a place I am comfortable at all. Again, I'm going to be looking to line up somewhere on my throat plate. Once I believe I am there, I'm going to hold this steady, anchor that so it doesn't move, in comes, I'm just going to choose that. And now I'm on my way. But as they say, wait, there's more. There is. This same company has 2 different seam guides. Same company, Sew Very Smoothly. Let's go over that again. Let's go with the 1/4 inch seam, which is what we're going to be going for today. Hand cranking that down into that. If you have maybe you have a shorter machine, you can go for the shorter version. The notch is to make sure that we are bracketing around our feed dogs and they're not interfering. Make sure you're running parallel, or believe that you're running parallel. And I simply press that in place. On the back side of this, there's a stickiness. It's extremely sticky. And now, there I go. I have this wonderful edge to press up against. And as my strip piece unit continues, I'll pick up an edge on this side as well. It's incredible. Let me just show you that real quick. In fact, we're going to do this twice. I'm going to do this with the smaller seam guide on, and then we'll go back and sew another unit with the longer. So let's just start here though. Okay, I'm going to cut my thread, but before I even do my measurement check, I'm going to switch this out. Let's go back to our seam guide. We will once again put that in place. Again, we're trying to run parallel with some lines. I can see this line here. Try to run parallel with that. Now if I'm like, no, I want to line up earlier. I want more assistance sooner. Get that running parallel. Make sure that kind of cutout is allowing for your feed dogs to function and not interfere. Press in place, and now we will sew again. Let me get another 2 pieces of our batik. What I love about this lining up already, it's very difficult now to actually mess this up. I love products that help me that are just about foolproof. I'm just going to be pressing up against this very profound ridge. So let's just look at that. Look how straight that helps me sew. And I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me press one of these to the side and press the other one open. Let's see what we get. When I first started quilting, I didn't know there was ever anything rather than a standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. And as I sewed my flannel quilts, we live up here in North Idaho, it's very cold in the winter. I was like, none of my blocks are coming out, and it never really dawned on me that that additional bulk of that flannel I love was really why I needed to be sewing with a little bit less than a 1/4 inch until somebody explained that to me. And I have struggled really being able to quantify where is a scant 1/4 inch. It's such an elusive thing. So what I'm the reason I bring it up is this is not one size fits all. When I'm sewing with 50 weight cotton and I have a 50 weight Aurifil in here, I often sew with a scant. When I sew with a flannel, I always sew with a scant. And when I sew with batik, I sew with a quarter. So it really kind of just depends on what you're sewing with. All right, let's take a measurement check. Now we have our full 1/4 inch seam allowance in this instance. I think we're really on the money on this one. Now with this one pressed open, hopefully I'm not too large. Sometimes the open really makes the strip piece unit flat. Look at that, right on the money. What that means is if I had sewn with that scant and I had used that guide to be a scant with this fabric, this would be bigger than 4.5 inches wide. So you can see that these aids really are fantastic for getting us to get that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance when we measure out. But whether you use a scant or whether you're going to use the full 1/4 or maybe something completely different like we talked about, maybe you're doing bags. These are great aids. Hey, that is the end of this series, but I will continue to look for more notions, more things to introduce to you that will increase your accuracy, give you options, and increase your joy of quilting. So thanks again for joining me for this series. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do that, and I'll see you soon on another Shabby video.